Hi, my name is Hannah. Welcome back to my channel, Savage Reads. I am going to do another one of my normal book wrap-ups. And background, it's Christmas time. We've got the tree up. I love our tree. It's a fake tree, but it's so fluffy and I love it so much. So I've been getting into the holiday spirit here. I'm making different kinds of cookies every day. It has been lovely. And I am just looking forward to school letting out and getting to spend extra time as a family. It's going to be wonderful. But before I do my normal book wrap up, of course, I have to do my regularly scheduled embroidery update. So I've been working on all the leaves. So we've gotten to this point. I'm just about done filling this in. And I do kind of feel like I maybe need some more brown to kind of connect some of these branches because I just don't know if this is reading quite right. It kind of looks like some floating branches, but I'm almost done with this part, and then I might add in a little bit more of the branches going through, and then I will be in on the grass and the fallen leaves of the path, and then I've got the path, which I'm trying to find some creative ways to do the path. Let's jump into the books that I have read the past week. So this next book I found on the list that the amazing Jolene at Bookworm Adventure Girl has compiled of Best Canadian Literature, and I picked up The Sisters Brothers by Patrick DeWitt. And I didn't know what I was getting into, and when I started this book, I thought, oh, it's like a cowboy western, and it's just not a genre that I'm very drawn to. We have our two brothers who are working for a powerful man off to assassinate someone, and they are going across the country, and it is kind of that classic Western feel, but in a very humorous sort of way. We get that Old West kind of feel. You get these people who are doing awful things, but you still kind of feel for them. And you get our main character, who is one of the brothers, who doesn't really love all the killing and violence that his brother does, but he has to be there to protect his brother. And I had a fun time with this book. I enjoyed it. I think there were some parts that kind of ventured almost into, I don't know, maybe magical realism that just I left a little confused with. And I still don't know if this is my genre of book. If you like something slightly humorous with that old Western feel, I thought this was a really good one for that. I was surprised how much I liked it. So my hold for Somewhere Beyond the Sea by TJ Klune finally came through this last week, and I had such a good time. This is the sequel to The House in the Cerulean Sea, and I loved The House in the Cerulean Sea. It was that perfect mix of wholesome and sincere while dealing with real topics that just tugged at my heartstrings and made me fall in love with it. Now, this one I do think tried to deal with some of those difficult topics again, but maybe didn't engage with them as fully as it could have, kind of went for the magical solution. But you know what? I didn't mind that because I was already in love with the characters. I already wanted them to succeed. And so I didn't care if it had the most realistic outcomes all the time. I was on board with it. And so this was 5 stars for me because it warmed my heart and I enjoyed it. If you liked The House in the Cerulean Sea, I think you'll love this. If you hadn't read that or you didn't really like it, I think you could pick this book apart, but I don't think it ruins the first one. I think it is what everyone would want from a sequel. I first added this book to my list because of Gemma at Gem of Books. I heard her talking about it and had to put it on my list right away. And you know what? I have heard so many people raving about this book. So I finally got around to James by Percival Everett. Now, this is a retelling of the book Huckleberry Finn, but from the perspective of Jim, or James as he prefers to be called. I thought this was really well done. We have James, who has this rich interior life and isn't just this caricature that you may have seen in Huckleberry Finn. And you get this code switching and this different dialect that he has to assume to stay safe and to keep his family safe. And you can also see him as a real man who cares that he is missing from his family and needs to get back to them. And I thought that it added so much depth to Huckleberry Finn. It almost made me want to read it again. But I never really loved it, Huckleberry Finn, in the first place, so I don't know if I really want to go read it again. But you recognize a lot of the same events. So after reading this book, I saw a review in The Guardian, and I just wanted to read it, a little piece of it to you, because I feel like it really summed up a lot of my thoughts on it. And it is talking about the part in Huck's journey where he has the choice to denounce Jim or to lie. And it says, Huck turns away from the racist morality he's internalized since childhood and chooses loyalty to Jim, though he believes it means spiritual damnation. All right then, he concludes, I'll go to hell. This is the crux of Huckleberry Finn and a key part of its claim to be an anti-racist novel. Everett's book reminds the reader that Huck's self-sacrifice remains purely theoretical. Despite its deft humor, comic set pieces, and great lightness of touch, James is the story of a man who knows that he's already living in hell. It really reframes the story and shows the difficulties that James suffers. I think my only thing with it, and this is not a criticism of the book, I think it was successful in this book, and I think it was appropriate, and I think that it had a lot to say. But when books show that we should care about people more as a person because they might actually be smart, or they might actually be educated, or they might actually have deep thoughts about things, it's one of those that individually in this book, I think it was fine, but as a trope, I have seen that happen a few times, and it does bother me where, okay, the whole town is angry at this man because they think he's a homeless bum, and then they found out he was a war veteran, so they feel bad about how they treated him. And I don't love that narrative, because I think that even if we went with James was not very bright and illiterate and couldn't speak well, he is still worthy of more respect than he was shown. And I don't think that this book did it. I think I just worry about it as a trope in general, because I think that the way they had this in the book really added a lot of meaning, and I don't feel bothered by that. So I first added this book to my list because of the review from the channel Triumphal Reads, so I will make sure to link that down below. But I have heard quite a few people talk about this book, and I was so excited to get to it. So I picked up The Demon of Unrest, a saga of hubris, heartbreak, and heroism at the dawn of the Civil War by Erik Larson. Now, I have read a few Erik Larson books at this point. I read Dead Wake, I read In the Garden of Beasts, and I read The Devil in the White City. And honestly, this one might be the best Erik Larson book that I have read. I really enjoyed In the Garden of Beasts. I gave that 5 stars. It might be one of my favorite nonfictions of the year, but I think this one was better. He did a really good job, and it is covering exactly what it says in the title. It is the period of unrest before the Civil War broke out. And I think the research that went into this was very meticulous and very interesting. I really appreciated the perspectives he chose to show. And I think it's worth looking at to understand more of the past, to be able to understand a lot of current things that are going on politically. And so I highly, highly recommend it. As always, when I read a book about the Civil War, I get really disturbed about the gentility of the South, adherence to a code of conduct, and these rules of civility that were just there to mask the horrors of slavery. And it is awful to read about, and that isn't necessarily where it focused, but there was enough of that in there that it always makes my skin crawl a little bit. Sometimes I just, when people are evil, you just wish that they would be straight up evil. And it is so awful to see how people can convince themselves that they are good when they are doing horrific things. And it covers almost all of these major events between Lincoln's inauguration to the shelling at Fort Sumter, and I thought it was an excellent read. If you are interested in the Civil War, I think you'll really love it. Even if it's just not something you really want to read about, I think you still will like this book. I just can't think of anyone that I wouldn't recommend this one to. I think it was really well done. And that is what I have read the past week or so. If you have thoughts on these books, let me know in the comments down below, and I will be back soon. I hope you are all having a wonderful time getting ready for whatever holidays you celebrate, and I will be back to making as many 100 cookies as I possibly can this week.